How's it going, guys? I'm Chris, and this is Regular Guy Training. So today we're actually going to talk about grip on a handgun. Now, as far as just the grip is concerned, all it really is that it's a technique to help us deliver bullets from point A to point B. Now, as far as the core fundamentals and that kind of stuff, you can have a pretty lousy grip, honestly, but as long as you have your sight alignment, sight picture, and press, trigger properly, you're going to be able to deliver bullets from point A to point B. The whole reason why, grip techniques and that and such are taught, really, is so that we can get the gun to return where it started, meaning I got the sights on target, shots fired, it recoils, and then it returns right where it started. One, and two, it just allows us to think about a little bit less as far as what's going on with the gun, and we can think more about the shooting straight part. So, all that being said, I've been taught a few different ways to grip a handgun, honestly. And the one that I use for a long time is actually something that I'm going to change. Now, I'm going to explain the first one for you really quick. And a lot of times when this is taught, it's not gone into great depth on just how it's applied and everything else. Because traditionally speaking, what we're looking at is with your gun hand, you're pressing on the front and back strap, and then on your support hand, it's squeezing the left and right hand side of the frame, and it's 100% all the way across the board, and that's really how it goes down. Now, as far as the posture on the handgun is concerned, a lot of times we're talking about balance and that kind of thing, making sure that our feet are bladed off, similar to like if you were to box, getting a guard, whatever. Only difference now is that it's also with a handgun, right? And we're extending those arms good and far out there. You can see that the shoulders are rolled forward, and a lot of times I've heard the good old extend until it causes you pain, back off to where it doesn't. That's your extension, right? Now, over time, I'd actually recognized a couple of issues with this, and over time also, it's been explained to me by people that are just phenomenal shooters, okay? Usually like your trophy hunters, your grandmasters, that kind of stuff. When you sit there and you talk to those guys about how they handle certain things, it starts kicking off a couple of lights in your head. Now, the grip technique that I'm about to teach doesn't require squeezing of the hands, it requires vicing of the limbs. Now, the reason why this is relevant and the reason why I personally favor this over just using your hands to grip onto a handgun is, think about it this way. Most, if not just about all, of the people watching this video, you've shot a baby-sized handgun in a regular caliber, like Glock 43 or a Shield in pick a caliber, right? Or you've shot a Magnum handgun, or you've shot a J-frame in any caliber. Most of the time, because those handguns are moving or bucking or recoiling or whatever you want to use it for the descriptor here, they're moving a little bit more in your hands. So a lot of times people buckle down and tighten up a little bit harder on those handguns. And if you think about it, that never really helps. They still kind of handle like crap, right? And here's the thing too, you've also done this, and I'll come back to why this is relevant here in a minute. We've also had really bad days on the range where you can't really figure out what exactly is going on. You got the posture on the handgun, you're focusing the grip on the gun's extra tight. It really feels like you're isolating that trigger, get the good wall, and you're trying to press as deliberately to the rear as possible. But you have like this low left freaking crescent shaped fucking thing going on in relation to your target. And, so all of us have had those bad days before. Now, I learned this the hard way. In a lot of ways, you guys might as well. This may be directly related to the fact that we're not paying attention to what's actually going on with our hands, and we're gripping a handgun, or we're tightening down on the handgun in the wrong places with the wrong parts of the body. Now, I say wrong, but it's really a subjective thing. It's going to be a what works for you kind of deal, but we'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. Now, if you tighten up the hands, there's a couple of issues that you run into. You lose dexterity in your digits, and you lose pliability in the hands. Now, you can actually show yourself this, right? Take your support hand and take your gun hand trigger finger. And what you can do is just rest the weight of that trigger finger on that hand. Keep this hand nice and loose. There's no tightening, there's no muscle tension, none of that stuff. When you set that right there on that portion of the palm, and with the weight of just that hand on that palm, start moving forward and back on it. And if you can see, I'm not pressing into it. All I'm doing is moving it forward and back. can see all that skin moving with that trigger finger, right? So it's nice and loose. Weight of the hand is on that portion of it, and you can see all that skin moving with it. Now, if we tighten the hand as much as possible, like to the point where we're shaking, and then we apply that same amount of pressure and start moving, you'll notice a whole lot less of that skin actually moves. And that's because we're tightening up the muscles in those hands. The issue with that is actually twofold, because now, think about it, keeping that in mind, and keep this in mind. Your gun hand, trigger finger, whichever one it is, it's my dominant hand's my left hand, so if you keep it loose and you just try to move your trigger finger, it'll move. You know, it's totally fine. It's independent of everything else. It's easy to move. And then if you tighten that hand up as tight as you can, and then try to move that trigger finger, you'll notice, especially right in here, that's much harder to do. And it's much less refined, and it's much more difficult as far as just what you can feel is getting strained in that portion of the hand and in a little bit of the forearm too. So if we have real tight hands, we lose our ability to really feel out all the garbage that's going on with our trigger. I don't care what trigger it is. So it just feels like open slack, straight wall fire versus all of the other stuff that's going on with it if we're trying to be precise. And we lose the pliability in our hands, which makes the gun move more freely in our hands, believe it or not. You know, and yeah, there's guys with stippling or fucking grip tape or checkering if it's got, you know, some sort of metal type frame on it like aluminum or steel or whatever, and that helps keep the gun from moving all over the place instead of it just being slick. But the movement's still there, and the funny thing is that especially if you're shooting in the cold and your skin's starting to get kind of dry and a little brittle, you can feel it grating you really hard, especially if you got a good tight grip on the gun with your hands. So okay, cool, don't grip as hard, Chris, but how in the fuck am I going to keep the gun down? Well, instead of using the grip tension in your hands to tighten everything down, what we can do is use the limbs. Now, if we roll our shoulders forward, this is actually going to be very difficult to do, and you'll be able to spot if you're not doing this correctly, if this takes effort out of you. But if we keep the shoulders rolled back, okay, if we keep the shoulders rolled back, and then with the shoulders rolled back, we have the leverage that we require to get into the biceps, triceps, forearms, and wrists, and cam those into both sides of the gun. What we're doing is we're wrenching both hands into the frame, especially on the upper section where it's the most important, because we're trying to arrest control, or as much control as possible, of this cycling component up top. That would be the slide. So if we're simply vicing the handgun into place, and you can actually see it in the forearms themselves are acting versus me just trying to grip with my hands. So both hands fold in because they're being torqued by the whole arm into place versus just relying on the hands itself. And as far as just how tight I hang on to this, it's similar to how tight you're going to hold on to a hammer. Because if you're too loose with a hammer, you miss nails. And if you're too tight with a hammer, you're going to miss nails. So hanging onto the gun just enough to have control of it, and then vicing the upper sections of both sides of this frame with the whole arm and the wrists. And all that really does is it arrests control of the upper section of the gun as much as possible, and it keeps everything tracking flat. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you guys like a forward as hell posture on a handgun. And I'm going to show you with this compensated handgun, and then I'm going to show you with a 19. And then I'm going to show you, the other technique that I just demonstrated for you. So let's pay very close attention to how the gun is moving in the hand, because you'll notice that as far as just energy being transferred and that kind of stuff, you'll notice a little bit of whippiness to the gun as I'm pushing out as much as possible, driving as much of that in there, and grabbing on with just my hands. So let's go ahead and get on that now. I'm gripping with just the hands, pushing all the way out. Okay, push out to where it hurts, back off to where it doesn't. Now I'm going to start the shoot now. Watch very closely what's going on with the gun. Now you'll notice I'm going fairly slow, but at the same time I'm having to move the handgun physically back to where I need to go. And if we're used to that kind of motion, especially on a like flashlight picture and that kind of stuff, we absolutely can shoot well. We can shoot accurately, we can shoot fairly fast. But with all that extra tension in there, and then relieving that tension to go for magazines and everything else, that makes other things slow as well. And you lose the dexterity and pliability in your hands. Now, that gun is stippled to shit, and there's a compensator on it, so it's tracking more or less fairly flat, but here's a stock gun while I'm doing the same thing. Okay? And of course, my buddy Garrett has to stick this ridiculous ass magazine in here, but same thing, pushing all the way out, gripping on with those hands, and this is a pretty plain Jane Glock, okay? The only difference that we have here is the friggin' RMR up top. So, gripping with the hands, pushing all the way out, locking those shoulders, watch what's going on with the front end of the gun. That's a little more broadcasted because there isn't a freaking compensator on it now. You actually see me having to move the handgun back into place. And what I'm feeling underneath it as well is as I'm gripping good and hard, I'm feeling edges of the frame start to move around in my hand a little bit. I'm noticing that my ring is actually moving itself quite a bit in the hand as well. And that's the issue, is that going from a P10C to a Glock 19, for instance, I really can't feel much of a difference between those two triggers in that posture. Right? Now, if instead all we do then, and you can come over to this side so you can see it very easy, is we just come out here, we roll those shoulders back, and then we vice the handgun into place. We're literally taking both hands and doing this motion. We're vicing the handgun into place, and you can actually see the difference right here because the hands are loose, right? But you can see how flat the gun tracks immediately. There's no real movement that's required the minute it starts to move, and I can keep going with this and show you just a little bit more because again, if we're vicing the handgun into place, and we're arresting the upper section of the frame, a lot more body weight really is getting thrown into this side of it without the use of those hands because the whole arm is turning. So all that takes from there is we're good and tight, we're rolled in, and all we're going to do from here is just fire a few rounds. Pretty flat shooting gun, yeah? But Chris, I hear you saying, that's a compensated handgun. What about that basic ass 9mm handgun that you were using before? Okay, same thing, rolling it in this way, and once we got it rolled in this way, all I'm doing it's still as flat as it was before. Okay, now if you have a heavier recoiling handgun like a 45 or something, it's going to do a little bit of its loopy shit, but the point is that as long as it comes right back where it starts, you can start to develop a cadence, right? And as far as developing a cadence and that kind of stuff is concerned, it's pretty easy. You don't have to just sit there and try to go faster, especially since more or less you can figure out when the gun's going to come back down every time if you don't have to move it constantly, and you can more or less just cadence it out yourself. It's pretty simple. And you can see I'm not sitting there wrestling the gun. I'm just kind of letting it do its own thing, and when the dot arrives, bang. Dot arrives, bang. And it's the same posture over and over and over again. So as far as all that's concerned, I mean, yeah, I have a compensated handgun, P10Cs shoot pretty flat, all of that stuff. But to me, anyhow, it just seems that it keeps whatever variety of handgun that I've shot before. You guys have seen me shoot 45s on the channel and that kind of shit too, so I'm using the same techniques on it. And the funny thing is that the extra pliability in the hands, even on that plain Jane Glock 19, you can see that the skin itself is molding itself to the existing stippling that's on that frame. Okay, and it's much more broadcasted when you're doing something like a stippled handgun, and it keeps the gun tracking even more flat because you have the pliability of your skin available now. It's not tight. It's soaking into those pores or digging itself into that grip stippling as much as it can. So, I mean, going from a slicker-sided handgun like that, I do not have a lot of bullets, but going from a slicker-sided handgun like that, and then going over to something that's compensated with fucking scales on it and all kinds of other stuff, and it nice and flat, no problems whatsoever. And just in that short time frame, you can see how fast my skin just soaked into the available pores on the handgun, versus being real tight to where if I'm gripping with just the hands, it would imprint a little bit, but not anywhere near as much, and it would just be gone. This is going to stay here for a few minutes, okay? Because without having to grip the shit out of that handgun, you're allowing looser skin, more passive skin, to just kind of meld itself into the frame. Now, in addition to all this too, it also helps a lot of guys shoot significantly straighter, because with the extra dexterity that you have in that trigger finger now, when guys, we see this all the time, when guys come out to class and that kind of stuff, they come out, they draw, we have them do a shot at a time out of the holster, so we're watching those mechanics, we're paying attention to what they're doing, fixing grips if they're doing like wrist grabs and shit like that, and we'll let them go for a whole magazine, draw on a shot for like a whole magazine, and they shoot whatever it is that they're going to shoot. And we see that, we apply this grip technique, and once they start to use that, they immediately figure out, especially our new folks, they immediately figure out that that Glock trigger, or whatever it is far sloppier than they've ever felt it before, which is good, because you should know about all those little mechanical imperfections, and you should absolutely be able to detect those, especially if you're trying to be precise. So on the next magazine, it's literally the next drill. We see it all the time, where we see like this weird crescent thing going on, and then immediately after that, a lot of that low left shit just immediately goes away. It shrinks to like doorknob size or whatever it is, and it stays tight. Now, a couple of checks on this. If it feels like it's requiring a lot of effort out of your hands to do, you're probably rolling your shoulders forward. Because again, that's how most guys are taught, including me. I taught that for a short time. But if your shoulders are rolled forward, you don't have the leverage to do this, so it's going to feel like it takes a lot of work. So it's a good way to check it. A good way to mess with that is to just stop for a second, roll those shoulders back, and now I have the torque required to really turn those hands inboard. Does that make sense? So there really is a purpose behind my wiry ass looking like I've got a set of tack bows every time I do the shooting part in anything, because it's actually a part of the grip technique. And the cool thing about me being built like a fucking coat hanger is, if there was grip discrepancies, if I had issues controlling handguns, any of that stuff, my wiry ass would broadcast it a lot. Okay? So even if you're a big, meaty dude, it might just make that handgun just a little bit flatter shooting, and who doesn't want a flatter shooting self-defense handgun? So that's all I have on this particular little segment here. I'm probably going to do a few more of these. Here's the thing. If you guys want to come out and train with us, we're working business as usual. So if you want to check us out and come out and train with us, I absolutely understand there's a lot of stuff that's going on right now, but go ahead and check us out if you feel the need to. Link is in the description below. If you want to help support us through Patreon, or if you want a very economical way to train a lot, you can check out the Patreon link I have in the description below, as well as one of the friggin' windows that pops up here towards the end. And for guys that show up to that and then sign up for $41 a month, you can train with us as much as you want to, so long as we have slots available and that kind of stuff. You sign up, you shoot me an email saying I want to take this, I verify you, and then I put you in a slot so long as I have them. And if you just want to throw a couple of bucks at us here and there, I absolutely appreciate it. It helps us bring soldiers out, within, in particular at the moment, my unit, or other units that are doing particular things. It helps us train them up without cost to them and that kind of thing. And it funds a lot of other various things that we do out here. It's a massive help. You guys have no idea. But that said, if you guys want to check us out on the Facebook page, link for that is in the description below. Also, I'm done with the plugs, and I'm done with today's little video. So remember, guys, regular guys firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy. That one, like the first shot out of that dude's extendo magazine, fucked me all up. just feels like freaking elephant dick flipping around.